Hi, I'm Paul from Trending, Who, What, Where, and When. Today, I will be speaking with the Amazon #1 best-selling author, Sandeep Adnani, about his book, Origin of the Exiled Rogue. Sandeep will be joining us from Melbourne, Australia.
Hello everyone, this is Sandeep Adnani, Amazon #1 best-selling author of The Codes of the Exiled Rogue and the newly published The Origin of the Exiled Rogue, which is part 2 of the Exiled Rogue series. I'm standing at the Shrine of Remembrance in the very iconic Royal Botanic Garden here in Melbourne.
Maybe mention some of the places that you would take company if they came to visit you there in
Okay.
Melbourne.
So Melbourne, the video that I had sent you was from the Royal Botanic Garden, from the Shrine of Remembrance. And as I mentioned, we're still in lockdown. So I had to find a moment when nobody was looking and take my mask off and take a video. But we're still allowed, we're allowed to gather in groups of 5 now. So, but if I were to take people, definitely Royal Botanic Garden is one of the spots I would take them to, and take them to the Shrine of Remembrance. A short walk from there is the Albert Lake and the Albert Park. And it has a wonderful, I mean, now the cafe is closed, but whenever people do visit, I'm sure it'll be open. So there's a wonderful cafe and overlooking the lake, and you walk all around the lake, and it's really nice, very scenic, and it's a wonderful view of the water and of the skyline. Really, really nice. One of the things that I had done for my 40th birthday was a balloon ride over Melbourne. So that was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And I have a fear of heights, but I would definitely recommend this as a way to see the city. It's a wonderful city, and there are two distinct tours. One is over the Yarra Valley, and one is over the city. So I took the city view. It was really nice, and you wake up really early, and you get to see the sunrise. And it's a very watched and admired activity here. So you'll see balloons in the sky all the time during good weather. And there is a steam engine, traditional steam engine. It's called Puffing Billy. That's about an hour and a half away from the city by train. And it's really cool because you can actually, the way the seating is that your legs are hanging out of the train, and you're seated on this ledge, and the train is going through the Yarra ranges. You're literally in this dense, all the trees and all the foliage. And when the train curves, you can literally see everybody who's sitting out because you have a view of a curve. And it's really cool. So for kids, for adults, for older people, everybody, great way to enjoy nature, because Australia is all about nature, enjoying the different landscapes that they have. And another place that I would take them to, not necessarily for the view, because the view doesn't change much. That is the Melbourne Star. It's like the London Eye. So the view doesn't change much because of the place it's positioned in. It's positioned in a place where you literally see a higher view and then a lower view, but the view is pretty much the same. But the reason to take people there is to take them to the Artwo, the 3D art immersive interactive experience that I've also mentioned, where you stand in different corners of the exhibit, and there is a point where you have to stand, and there is a point where whoever's taking your picture has to stand. So you will look like you are surfing, or you will look like you're inside a wine glass, or inside a cube, or floating, or whatever. So it's really interactive and really nice. So every room has about 5 or 6 different pictures you can take, and there are lots of rooms. That whole complex is nice. It's called the Docklands area. So it's really nice, and it's a walk from the city, so it's not far at all.
Okay. On your list, you also mentioned other cities that you would be familiar with enough to take people to places. One of which
Sure.
was Mumbai.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a city where I lived for 7 years, and there's because it's a sea-facing city. There are lots of venues near the sea to take people. But there are places, very iconic places, where I would take people. Where one of them is called the Queen's Necklace. Again, of course, aptly named after our uh, colonization. So there is it's an arched road which is lit up in the night, and it looks like a necklace, and it's facing the sea. So it's something that you can enjoy looking at from an aerial view, also, or you can also enjoy walking on it. It's a fairly long road which leads from one end to the other end of town. If I want to mimic the same experience in the suburbs, it's called the Bandra Bandstand, which again is a road, a promenade, which hugs the sea, and you'll often see people sat over there, people walking, and it ends in what's called the Bandra Fort, and that's something I didn't know about, even though I lived there for many years. But it's something that you just keep walking, and a true local will take you there, and it's the ruins of a very very old fort. So that's also a very interesting point to see Mumbai, where you can see the newly, it's not new, but it's about what 7 8 years old, the massive what they call the sea link, which links one side of Mumbai to the other, cutting traffic, cutting travel time. And it's a really iconic bridge, and very, very long, about 2 or 3 kilometers long, I think, or more probably. And a very interesting structure, and very, it's come to be synonymous with Mumbai now. So it's a very good point to see it, a very nice uninterrupted view of the fishing boats and this structure of the sea link. Mount Mary Church. Now, this is one of my favorite places in Mumbai. Um, we It's on top of a hill, so again, it's part of it's near the place where I just mentioned. But if you drive up a hill, and the statue of Mother Mary is literally uh, on top of the hill, on top of a mound kind of thing, overlooking the entire suburban Mumbai. So you'll find people from all faiths going over there, because, as you know, India is very multi faith. So we go everywhere we're allowed to pray, and people of all faiths go there. They light a candle, and we believe that she's watching over the whole city. She's protecting the city, and people call her mother, like not only just Mother Mary, but just mother. And it's a very memorable place for me, because it's a place where I used to go often, and really pretty views, and very peaceful, very scenic place as well.
And you'd also mentioned Sanjay Gandhi National Park.
Yes, yes. So it's really so it's my side of town. So it's literally deep in the suburbs, and it's a place. I mean, again, it's, imagine the lung of New York, like Central Park. So this is like the lung of Mumbai. It's a very very large park, which thankfully has not yet been encroached upon. And you have a variety of wild animals, and walking paths, and people go there and really, get away from the hustle bustle of the city. So it's a really nice place, especially for the enthusiasts of people who enjoy, taking pictures of birds, of animals, and just a changing landscape, because Mumbai can become very concrete, and very, like, there's not much room. So it's nice to go somewhere where it's roomy, and your eyes can look to the distance without seeing people. So, as you know, Dubai is, fast developing. There's always a new attraction or something new um, coming up. But the sites that I have mentioned one of them is new, but the rest of them are very old. and not very old, but old in the scheme of things. One of them I mentioned is Zabil Park. Now, Zabil Park was literally, again, as you can say, a large lung of the desert. So it was created in the center of the city, and it actually has a highway going through it. And because there's a highway going through it, they have built a beautiful, again, a beautiful bridge-like structure for people to walk, from one end to the other. It's a very large park for people to walk around. Most of the parks in Dubai have rubberized tracks, so they really encourage people to get out there and walk, and it's very comfortable to walk on them. And Zabil Park has three dome structures which have various exhibits, really interesting and very good, I mean, learning opportunities for kids and also for adults. So you'll find a lot of people going there for with school trips or just, as a family outing. And part of Zabil Park is another thing that I mentioned. It's called the Dubai Frame.
Hmm.
Now imagine a massive frame, but it's empty in the middle. And you go up what would be the sides of the frame where the elevator is, and the top ledge is the viewing gallery from where you can see literally the old and the new of the city. So if you look north, you will see all the high rise, the new skyline of Dubai. And if you look south, you will see the old Dubai where the creek is, where the structures are not as tall. Yes, they're modern, but you can literally, it's like a lens, of history. And for the people who are daredevils, they can walk on that part of the frame where the ground has, I mean, it's you're walking on glass, so you can see below. So for people who dare, they can do that.
So you had mentioned Palm Island.
Palm Island, yes. So Palm Island, as you can imagine, you must have heard, it's something that can be seen from the moon. A very very ambitious, reclaiming process, especially in the desert where you're dealing with sand. So it had been solidified with rock first, and then they had put sand. It's one of the few things that can be seen from the moon. And though they had built it with great speed, it took a while to, populate it with everything. You have a whole string of luxury hotels and luxury experiences there. But the first one to open was the Atlantis, and it's a brilliant hotel because Dubai is all about luxury, all about, 5 stars and your, staycations and your vacations. And it has a beautiful water park called Aqua Venture, with a with lots of different rides with tubes and, with inflatable rings, etc. But there's one very scary one which I haven't done, but I watched my best friend do. That you climb right up and you go into a slide which comes into a pool filled with sharks. But obviously the person who's coming through the tube will not know because it's so fast, you won't know. But for the person watching, you can see, okay, there are sharks there, and you as close to them as possible. And they have other experiences there as well, that you can get into the cage and mingle with the fish and feed the dolphins, etc. So all that stuff is there. But water parks, as you can imagine, for a desert country are very popular. You have sun 12 months a year, and it's warm 9 months of the year, so they're pretty popular. And lots of water parks in the country. Again, another old development which has been, um, they've added things to it. So Medina Jumeirah was initially one hotel, then they added another hotel, then they added a souk, which is like not, I wouldn't call it a mall, but it's like a tiny, shopping center, but very Arabic with the arches, and the structure is very Arabic. Then they added an amphitheater, then they added a boat ride. So they keep adding things. So there was once a time where you could take the boat only if you were dining in one of the exclusive restaurants, or you were staying on the property. But now obviously it's become a, pay and smile thing. You go, you get a ticket as a tourist, and you see the whole hotel uh, via boat, and what they call Abra in Dubai. and modern one, obviously. And you see the whole architecture that they have recreated. So they've recreated the whole Arabian wind towers and the whole sand effect in these hotels and properties. And this one is right next to the seven star, the Burj Al Arab. So it kind of becomes like a backdrop.
Okay.
So they're neighbors, and but it's a really pretty property and very, very quaint, very quiet. So it's somewhere, it's one of my to go places if I'm taking people around over there.
Okay. So then you've done skydiving and parasailing there?
No, I haven't done skydiving or parasailing. I'm very scared of heights, but I know people who have. What I
Okay,
have done is a helicopter ride. So the
really?
helicopter ride in Dubai was brilliant. I have done parasailing, a kind of, a version of parasailing in Thailand, but I haven't done it in Dubai. But the helicopter ride was amazing because they take you really close to buildings and they go into the city. So they have the permission to do so. So you're seeing the city from a completely different viewpoint, completely different perspective. And that's something I really enjoyed. And it was actually a surprise. One of our friends had organized it as a birthday present for another friend, and we all got to go. So that was really nice. But people who have the guts have done parasailing as well as skydiving, and 15, 20,000 feet or 12, 15,000 feet. And that's also something that's done a lot over there with all your, bells and whistles, your video and your training, etc., etc. Watching it was enough for me.
Okay, yeah.
But for the ones who are not faint-hearted, I would recommend this for sure.
Interesting. In the last year, you've also been in Canada going to different places.
Yes, Canada. In fact, that was the reason why it actually featured in my first book. There was a whole scene, a whole event from my holiday to Canada, which I took inspiration from, and I put it as one of the key themes in one of the chapters, where we were talking about Canada. So Canada was it was my first time to Canada, though I have been multiple times to the United States, and I have seen Canada from the Buffalo side when I have been to Niagara Falls. I've been to Niagara Falls twice in the US. But this was my first time uh, to Canada, and it was really nice. Um, it was as I expected. So I expected something like Australia in terms of density. It wasn't too dense, and the Canadian side of the Niagara Falls was indeed beautiful. And it just felt so nice to see so many people, representing two different countries, but both of them enjoying different views and really into it. So it was really nice. Toronto was lovely. Again, very much like Melbourne, small. I won't call it small, but smaller than the kind of big cities you would have in the US. So a smaller city center, which you can, cover on foot, a lot of it. And my highlight was Montreal. I had romanticized that city, and that was one of the cities I had considered, studying in when I was making applications. And it was just wonderful. I mean, I covered the entire city on foot. I was with a friend who insists that we walk everywhere so that we get to see more, and it was just brilliant. And there was real history there. I mean, they preserved it amazingly well. And the incident that happened, which inspired me to write, was it happened when I had taken a day trip to Quebec, the Quebec city, the old Quebec city. So we were there, and native singers were drumming, and people had all joined in, and they were literally, even people who didn't know the language or didn't know anything, but they were held in trance by the drumming, and people were swaying, and the crowd just kept getting larger and larger. And even though it started drizzling, people didn't move. People were staying put, and they were staying put. They were enjoying. People were enjoying, and there was so much wisdom in that one moment. Like, just surrender and just be one with nature, be one with each other. You don't need language. You don't need anything. You're just music is universal. You're just there, and they're singing in their native language. We don't know what they're singing, but it was just so peaceful. and the rain stopped. People were still standing there. People were enjoying. And then I was like, okay, because we were on a day trip, we were on a timer, but others were not. So they were standing and enjoying. But I remember leaving the city and getting on the bus, and there were still people standing there and enjoying that moment. So that's something that I have weaved into my story in the first book. You don't think you're going to write one book, but you end up writing three. So it was literally one of those. It was literally one of those stories, and the first one came on a burst of inspiration. 50 days flat. Had the first one written. I was sitting on the story idea for 6 years, so it's not like I hadn't wrestled with it. But when the time is right, and in my case, I would say when I had enough life experience to write about an existential crisis, then I wrote about that. And it was one of my things to do before I turned 40. So I did it while I was 40. So I was still 40 when I finished writing. So I kept the promise to myself. But very soon after I finished writing it, I realized that it's not going to be a standalone book. There's more to the story. And after the launch, and we had launches in 3 countries for the first book. And very soon after the launch, we had the gift of what I like to call the retreat of wellness. I don't like to use the word lockdown or quarantine or isolation. And I had a 4-month retreat in which I, wrote 2 more books, wrote part 2 and part 3. So I think it was one of those, I call 2020 the year of transformation. So I think it was very easy to write this genre for me, which I call metaphysical and transformational fiction. So you go within and you write what you feel, and it came out very easily. Didn't need much coaxing. I don't know if you know, but the second book also went on to be a bestseller.
I saw that.
So yeah,
I saw that.
so that was great news. And now I'm just working on the final edits for the third one. I'll just keep it ready. So when we are allowed to travel, then I'll turn it into a book tour and just travel to different countries and promote the book, promote book 2 and book 3. So
Oh, that's an interesting idea. That should be exciting.
yeah, that's what I thought of.
Your new book was a little bit different than the first book, but it was very good.
Yeah.
I think it explained a lot of what transpired in the first book. It was
Yeah.
more clear to me after reading the second book all the way through.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little more about your new book.
The new book is called The Origin of the Exiled Rogue, which is part 2 of the Exiled Rogue series. And it continues exactly from where the first one left off, from the very moment the first one finished. And I was given advice not to label it starting from chapter 25, but I said, no, I want people to realize that this is actually a continuation.
I like that.
So, yeah. So, and somebody has written a review on Amazon and very kindly said that this is the reason why I'm giving this rating, because it's not a standalone book, but I like the book and people have to read part 1 to know part 2. And I said, yeah, totally. Because after I've published 3 of them, I will publish them in one novel, one composite novel. So, and you can read all 3 in one ebook or read all 3 in one paperback. That's the plan. So the origin continues exactly from where the first one finishes, and it continues the journeys, and the journeys are something that you wouldn't imagine, you wouldn't expect, and they turn the book, the first theories of the first book, pretty much on its head. And people will either love it, or people will be like, they might feel cheated. They might be like, what the hell, I didn't see this coming. So
I didn't see it coming, but I also didn't feel cheated. I was very surprised at what was in there.
great.
I wouldn't not have expected it. And then your third book, you're working on, you think it'll be done early March of next year?
Oh, the book will be done before the end of the year, because it's already in like the 5th round of edit now.
Okay.
So I crowded my editor's mailbox. I sent her two books, and she's like, "Can you like give me some time, please?
Okay.
Can you take it easy with the books?" So it'll be ready. From my side, it's pretty much ready, but I guess we have to go through the, because I did the second book a little differently with beta reading and with proofreaders, and with we involve more people in the process, so that A, we can catch mistakes, and B, we can get more feedback. We can see, because sometimes you're so engrossed in your own story you don't realize, but somebody might actually have something useful to say.
Yeah.
So the third book starts from chapter 49, because the second book finishes on chapter 48, and it goes right up to chapter 72. So the second book is all about the journeys of the six characters, and you have some unexpected twists and turns. But I promise everyone that it all comes together. There's a reason for everything that's happened in book 1 and 2, and everything comes together in book 3. So
Okay. So that sounds good. I'll watch for that. Need to read that, so it completes the series.
yeah.
Okay. Would you share with us any added advice that you would have for new authors?
There's so much, because when I did the first book, your first book, first of anything is, you make mistakes, you learn. It's a very, very high learning curve. So this time I actually had an agency, a communications agency, to do not only the cover, but to do a whole campaign art. The whole campaign has been designed by them, because it's not like one ad hoc post here or there. I have so much to communicate. um, like I had mentioned the last time, is that I also shared sketches of the characters with the audience as a run up to promoting book 2. And I have a very key scene from the first book, which I engaged an artist to draw. She did a beautiful job. She has drawn the Wuxing Garden in Hong Kong, which is obviously a fictional place, but she's drawn what I imagined, and I explained, gave her a brief, and she's drawn it, and it's all out on my social media handles. So as part of this whole creative process, I engaged the same artist to draw a scene from the third book, and I engaged another pair of artists to draw a scene from the second one. So that one's ready. Whole point, the whole thing that I got onto now was, authors helping authors, or artists helping artists. So I wanted to involve as many artists in my journey, and give them the coverage, and give them the credit, so that authors can engage with people who can lift their book, because a book usually traditionally is just the cover and that's it. So there's so much that I learned, and there's so much I did by myself. I mean, I did the title reveal, the trailer, the teaser by myself. Designed it by myself. So there's just so much out there for a self-published author like myself to do. If you're going to go through traditional publishing, then obviously you get support from the publisher. The process is obviously much longer, and you have less autonomy in the process. But if you want to get your story out there, and if you want to do it by yourself, self-publishing means self everything, and it's a massive project with timelines, and this I've learned so much, and I've been sharing that on my Twitter and on other platforms, that if authors need to do a successful promotion of their book, there's a lot that goes into it, and the more they can do, the more visual they can make it, the more chances they have to stand out, because there are thousands of books being published daily. Obviously, the art part of publishing is important, but I cannot stress enough the importance of an editor, because you're too close to your own work, and maybe a beta reader or proofreader can give you some kind of reflection or perspective, but nothing like an editor to go through your work, to challenge you. There was a gentleman on Twitter who I engaged with, and I beta read his book. His first language is not English, and he's writing. He's translating his current work into English, and it was a very interesting read. And I asked him a few questions. I said, how come you formatted it this way, or how come you don't use quote marks, for example? And he said, oh, we don't use them where we come from. So it was so interesting to know. I thought it was a norm. And I said, but since your concern is the English, because obviously when you translate, you know, you lose meaning, and if person doesn't speak native English, they might not be able to do justice to the content. I said, you definitely need not only an editor, but a translator as well. So can't stress it enough, because a lot of people just don't get an editor. They self-edit. Self-editing is very important, but you need a fresh pair of eyes, preferably somebody who's experienced, who can give you that feedback, and who can challenge you, who can ask you the difficult questions, you know.
Okay, well, thank you. That's good advice.